And the truth be told, the race that first discovered prosperity and wealth, and they really nurtured it, are the Igbo race. The Igbos first discovered it through their ancestral background.
I lived through a war from the time I was 12 till I was 15, the Nigeria Biafra war. And that was really a defining time of my life as well, where I saw people die from malnutrition. I knew what it meant to have 1 meal a day or no meal at all, to sleep on the floor or sleep. So
I'll tell you another something that would make you smile. There's a college called Ambassadors College in Ota, Ogun State. They had about almost people that participated in this international Olympiad, STEM Olympiad, you know. And out of those 12 people, I think about 5 or 6 were still people from the Southeast. What does that tell you? Now, there is a debate all over Twitter. There's a debate all over, you know, there are opening spaces saying that Alex Sonia did a regional mago-mago by bringing out some people just from the...
Yes, the Oni of Ife said some remarkable things about Igbos. And these are the things that we know already. Even in the present time, I think I've said it earlier that a friend of mine, when I was serving in 2004, he asked me from the north, how do we Igbo people, how are we making all this money? It's not that I myself, I have the money, but he was asking general question, how are we doing it? What are we doing? So the Oba, I'm going to show you the video. Oba acknowledged the fact that the Igbos are the ancient people. So leave all this social media blah, blah, blah that you usually hear people blabbing anyhow. Yes. Oba of Ife, or Oni of Ife, acknowledged the fact that Igbos are even older than, in fact, the oldest when it comes to settlement. And another fact that he pointed out is that the idea of wealth, that wealth lies with the Igbos. Imagine for him to open his mouth and be saying these things, it means that he has done well. So anybody that is arguing with, you don't need to argue much, you know, on social media. Just show them what you can do. And up to today, you know, Igbos are not, you know, relenting. They are still showing what they were made of because it's already in the bone marrow. You cannot take it away from them. And if Nigerians know what, let me not just talk too much. Let's just see what Oba said about what I have just said.
But to the glory of God, a particular race actually discovered it first. And the truth be told, the race that first discovered prosperity and wealth, and they really nurtured it, are the Igbo race. The Igbos first discovered it through their ancestral background, the lineage of Obatala, discovered the prosperity and wealth in terms of the divinity world. And that's the reason why today the race of Igbo people, they're very, very particular, and they have very good expertise when it comes to commerce. They are very distinct all over the world. There is no place in the world that you will go that you won't find an Igbo man. And the same goes with the Jews. There is this mistake that the world usually make. They make this mistake that the Igbos came from the Jews. No, it is the other way around. The truth be told, the first human race that existed was the Igbos before the Jews. And we were all living together at the center of tropical rainforest, which is the heart of the whole thing, the land of expansion. We were all living together as one big happy family before they started moving clockwise. They started moving towards the eastern part of the world, where they started settling. So the race of the Jews and the Igbos are very similar, but the Igbos are way older than the Jews. They are both commercially driven. They are both enterprise in nature. They are both driven by wealth, because that is their ancestral belief. That's the race they belong to. In Nigerian economy today and the entire black race, if you don't give honor to the Igbos in terms of commerce and trade, you are just deceiving yourself. So the truth be told, let us go back to our history, where we all came from. Ideally, the Igbos are supposed to join us to celebrate this festival because it belongs to them and the entire human race and the Yoruba race. We are just the custodian because at some point we're all living together here. So let us realize what connects us. What connects us is more important than what brings us, that separates us. This is one of the major things that connects us together. So I want to use this medium of this festival to reach out to them, for them to dig out more facts about their history, the main scholars in Igbo land, to fact find their roots and ascertain the fact that we're all living together as one big happy family. And Igbos, they don't joke with colonel.
All right, you've heard that yourself. What do you think about the Igbos? Are you going to reduce some of the social media noise that some of you make on social media? Are you going to reduce it? It's not that we are bragging, no, we are not bragging, but it's just natural thing. It's not natural thing, you know. God gifts is in us. You cannot take it away. We are adventurous. Igbos are adventurous. You cannot take it away from them. They will come to desert and turn it to a city. Up till today, even with what has happened to the Igbos, the way Igbos were invaded and attacked, they are still with their open mind, doing everything as if nothing happened. But still, they are still being pushed to the wall. Well, what will happen, and all of us will learn our lessons. Let it be. Yes, concerning the Alex of Olympiad event that happened in Italy, we are still hearing some other news that are coming out about the Igbos also. We learned that the people that represented, you know, some people that went from Ogun State that did not make it, that some Igbos are there, almost half of them are Igbos also. Well, let's have a look.
So it wasn't only on Chimso. It wasn't only Chimdi Ebube on Biko. It wasn't only Ejegrum Onyedekachi that won gold. There were students from Jesuit College, Gonzaga Jesuit College. I don't know whether it's in Okija, but it's in Anambra, our own Anambra, that won 12 gold medals. 12 gold medals. They won 4 silver medals and 3 bronze medals from this competition. I'm telling you, I kid you not, from the southeast. Now, let me tell you another something that would make you smile. There's a college called Ambassadors College in Ota, Ogun State. They had about almost people that participated in this international Olympiad, STEM Olympiad, you know. And out of those 12 people, I think about 5 or 6 were still people from the southeast. What does that tell you? Now, there is a debate all over Twitter. There's a debate all over, you know, their opening spaces saying that Alex Onya did a regional mago-mago by bringing out some people just from the southeastern region without doing a national, you know. They were just trying to twist it to say it has, you know, what they're trying to do. We're not here for bigotry. We're not here for tribalism. But the area that I'm going to is that Alex Onya is not even, I don't want to use the word rich. Alex Onya is not even on the top of the food chain. So he's like a middle-class person in the southeast. Now, count our billionaires. How are we going to do this? How are we going to make sure that education is something that is admirable in our southeast? Aside from people that came from average homes, because if you look at those kids, you will see that most of them came from average homes. We are looking at how can we do that? That is the next question, because we won't stop. We can never stop with what we've seen, with the results we are getting. We need to push harder We need to even 10x whatever we've done now. And to those teachers that train these children, you already see that those teachers are very professional, high-grade teachers. What are we going to do about them? Because they need the reward. This is the first time we're seeing teachers in that light. Teachers, they suffer for Nigeria. What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do? Especially the teachers, the students, how are we going to replicate this result across board, yearly, annually, to extend further, and not just on this aspect, creative, literature, writing. There are so many things that we should inculcate because we need an expansive knowledge base for the future in the Southeast. Comment, let's have some chit-chat, okay?
In 1967, a renowned professor of mathematics and economics from the ancient kingdom of Ogwashuku put down his chalk, put on his soldier's uniform, and joined the war for a country that would not survive 3 years. His daughter still holds that memory. She survived the hunger, the displacement, the loss of everything her family owned. Decades later, she will sit at the head of a table in Geneva, representing 164 nations, as the first woman and the first African ever to lead the World Trade Organization. This is the story of Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, a princess of Ogwashuku Kingdom, an Enuani woman, an Igbo woman, whose life is proof of what this land has always produced. Excellence forged under pressure.
I lived through a war from the time I was 12 till I was 15, the Nigeria Biafra war. And that was really a defining time of my life as well, where I saw people die from malnutrition. I knew what it meant to have 1 meal a day or no meal at all, to sleep on the floor or sleep. So it was a really tough and difficult time. So all this made me to understand I'm the kind of person who can sleep on the floor today or sleep on a feather bed and be equally comfortable in both.
Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was born on the 13th of June, 1954 in Ogwashuku, an Enuane community in Anyota South local government area of Delta State. Her father, Obi Professor Chukwuka Okonjo, was a mathematician and economist who taught at the University of Ibadan, later the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Her mother, Kamene Okonjo, was a sociologist and educator. Together, they raised 7 children in a household built around one shared conviction that education was the family's greatest inheritance. That household would soon be tested by war. In 1967, the Nigerian Civil War broke out. The eastern region declared itself the Republic of Biafra. Chukwuka Okonjo moved to the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and during the war became a brigadier in the Biafran army and head of the Biafran Organization of Freedom Fighters. He would later be quoted as saying that his family lost everything they owned, their savings and their household belongings, as they moved from place to place through the war years. Ngozi was a teenager during this period. In interviews given over the years, she has described a childhood interrupted, 2 of the war's years spent out of school, food scarcity, illness widespread. In one account given to Forbes Africa, she recalls surviving on 1 meal per day while children around her were dying, and learning, in her words, to live very frugally ever since. Estimates of the total lives lost in the war vary, with historians citing figures from roughly 3 million to 5 million people, mostly from hunger and disease. The war ended in January 1970. Chukwuka Okonjo returned to academic life, rising to professor of economics at the University of Nigeria in 1971. Ngozi resumed her education at Queen's School in Enugu, then St. Anne's School in Ibadan. then the International School, Ibadan. In 1973, she left Nigeria for the United States and enrolled at Harvard University, graduating in economics in 1976. She went on to MIT, earning a master's degree in city planning, and in 1981, a doctorate in regional economics and development. She joined the World Bank in 1982 and spent 25 years there, working across Africa, Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe, before rising in 2007 to Managing Director for Operations, the #2 position at the institution. In 2003, President Olusegun Obasanjo appointed her Nigeria's Minister of Finance, the first woman to hold the post. She reduced the number of federal agencies operating in Nigeria's ports from 14 to 6 and required the state governments to publish how much money they receive from the federal government each month. Her most cited achievements came in 2005 when she led the Nigerian team that negotiated the cancellation of $18 billion of the country's external debts with the Paris Club of Creditor Nations, reducing Nigeria's external debt from $35 billion to $5 billion. That year, Euromoney magazine named her Global Finance Minister of the Year. It's worth noting her tenure was not without controversy. Critics, particularly labor and civil rights groups, argued that some of her reforms, especially cuts to fuel subsidies, placed a heavy burden on ordinary Nigerians, even as they satisfied international creditors. That debate about her legacy continues among Nigerian economists today. She served briefly as Foreign Affairs Minister in 2006, then returned to a second term as Finance Minister under President Goodluck Ebele Azikiwe Jonathan from 2011 to 2015, during which Nigeria's GDP was rebased in 2014, revealing it as the largest economy in Africa. In December 2012, armed men kidnapped her mother, Professor Kamini Okonjo, then in her 80s, from the family's home in Ogwashuku, demanding that Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala resign as finance minister in exchange for her release. She did not resign. Her mother was freed 5 days later. She later wrote that the experience led her to write her book, Fighting Corruption is Dangerous, dedicating it to both her parents, because they, she wrote, especially my mother, are the inspiration and instigation for it.
My 83-year-old mother, a retired professor of sociology, was kidnapped by 4 young men and held for 5 days. Keeping her wits about her as she was totally terrified, she asked them why she had been kidnapped. And they told her, quote, because your daughter, the finance minister, refused to pay oil marketers their dues. The kidnappers, negotiating with my brother, demanded my resignation publicly. I should go on television publicly and announce my resignation and depart from the country as a condition for my mother's release. Needless to say, these were some of the worst days of my life. Imagine, when you are in position, you want your parents, all of whom are here with you today, and your relatives, to be proud of you. You want to be a source of good for your family. You can imagine how I felt sitting there and thinking, just because of trying to do something right, to implement a good bit of policy that was good for the country, this could lead to the taking of my mother's life. These were some of the worst days of my life. With my father's support, the firm resolve of the president, we all decided I should not give in to the blackmailers, and I refused to resign. Following a manhunt, I'm sorry, I still feel emotional when I talk about it. And this story is not really publicly known, so this is probably the first time I'm giving the full details. Following a manhunt for my mother by police and security agencies, she was able to make a dramatic escape after 5 days in captivity, where she had only been given water and half of a sausage roll. So here was a well-justified cleanup and reform of a policy, but implemented in a dangerous reform environment where the losers in the reform, well-entrenched vested interests, decided to fight back to derail implementation. The decision not to resign was a very difficult and risky one. As it turned out, it worked. But there are days I ask myself, on my down days, what if it hadn't? What if they had gone ahead and murdered my mother, as she overheard them planning to do, with one of their handlers on the phone? Could I have justified trading off firmness on policy and standing up to blackmailers, implementing a good piece of public policy for my mother's life? What decision would you have made? Faculty, what decision would you have made?
In February 2021, World Trade Organization members formally selected her as the organization's next Director General, with the WTO's own report noting she carried the broadest support of any candidate across every region and level of development. She was sworn in as Director General in March 2021, the first woman and the first African to lead the World Trade Organization since its founding in 1995. She has since been named twice to Time's 100 Most Influential People, listed 7 times among Forbes' Most Influential Women in the world, and awarded Nigeria's Grand Commander of the Order of the Niger, among numerous other honors. Her father was crowned Obi of Ogwashuku in 2007, and her mother became the kingdom's queen mother, a royal lineage that this daughter of Igbo land carried all the way to Geneva. Beyond titles, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala's family reflects the same drive for excellence. She is married to her childhood sweetheart, Dr. Ikemba Iweala, a neurosurgeon from Umuahia, the capital of Abia State. Together, they have raised 4 children, Onyinye, Uzodimma, Okechukwu, and Uchechi. Their only daughter, Onyinye Iweala, holds both a PhD and a master's degree from Harvard, and now serves as an assistant professor of medicine, specializing in allergy and immunology, currently at Duke University, carrying her mother's academic rigor into the field of medicine. Her son, Uzodimma, is also an acclaimed novelist, author of Beast of No Nation. It is, by any measure, a family built entirely on the same foundation she has laid with her husband: education as inheritance passed down through generations.
You cannot lead if you cannot listen. A leader must have empathy. A leader must have courage. To lead, you need to have the courage of your convictions, because leadership is not easy. And to lead, you must also be a good follower. Diversity and representation is critical. You need to have all voices and all views in leadership positions, because God made a diverse world, and therefore we need to reflect that diversity. But I also insist on merit. It is those who have the capacity and merit leading who should lead. But what does that mean? Does it mean that within a diverse world you cannot find within each population those who are merit-worthy? The answer is no. Of course you can find them. And therefore you can have both merit, diversity, and representation. You can have excellence.
She did not choose the war she survived, but she built everything that came after it. Brick by brick, negotiation by negotiation, refusing to let where she started determine where she stopped. To the young people of Enuani watching this, her story did not begin with privilege. It began with hardship and with parents who believed education was the way through it. What she built from that beginning belongs to all of us as Igbo people. This is Enuani Cultural Forum, where we promote the rich cultural heritage of the Igbo people. If you enjoyed watching the beautiful documentary of the life and extraordinary achievements of Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, kindly hit the subscribe button, put a comment down below, let us know what you think about her achievements. My name, once again, is Prince Onwadenim Ngozi Chukwuka.
Yes, the lists are endless. The lists are endless. Why some people are busy training their children on how to beg, on how to shoot, on how to sharpen knife, looking for where they will grab land. What are you going to do with the land? The ones that you have grabbed, what are you doing with it? Nothing. You are not doing anything with the land. And you are still grabbing, looking for where to conquer. Well, having said that, let's take a look at this.
And in this video, I want to let you know something wey many of you know they get for mind. Shey una know say there are only 2 ethnic groups that refuses to be eliminated or erased from this planet Earth. So because of say these 2 people refuse to be eliminated or erased for this planet Earth, they are considered as bad people. And these 2 people, because of say they don't see say they no fit erase them, they no fit buy them more, they no fit comot them from the surface of this earth, they can't decide to be pushing propaganda against them. And these 2 people, now Israel and Igbo. That is why despite say every tribe for Nigeria, they do 419 in one way or the other. Everybody they focus on Igbo, say na Igbo they do 419. In every tribe, we get that person where they like do bad thing. Apart from T group where everybody no involve themselves in. But when it come to that one, Fulani and Kanuri, that they carry crown, now them get the crown. Apart from that one, every other shady things, every individual tribe, one way or the other, they do them. Now, Igbos, no be all of them they do fake thing. No be all of them they put hand for shady things. Likewise, my own tribe will be Benue. We get people where they do fake thing. We get people where they do 419. Yoruba the same thing. Ibibi the same thing. Name that tribe when no they into shady things. But the whole world decide to focus on Igbo because of that propaganda where they push against them. Even for South Africa, people go tell you say na Igbos they push powder. But we get Yorubas where they push powder. We get Ibibi, Edo. Even if my tribe they there, we get some of my tribe where they push powder. The reason why my tribe, you know, go include them to that kind of thing because say we no like to travel. We like farming work. Truth is bitter. People no go talk am, but me, I go talk am. Because I want betterment for this world. Now, when it come to Israel, na T group, they pursue them. Na terror group, they pursue them. Na terror country like Iran, Iraq. I know those 2 groups where they Lebanon. And T group where they all over the world. They try every means to erase Israel. Because they see say Israel na threat to them. They see say they no fit erase them. What did they do? They begin push propaganda against Israel. They begin call Israel genocide country, T group country. No name where they no give Israel. But still, Israel refuse to bow. Igbos refuse to bow. No matter the name, where they call Igbo people for Nigeria, they call Igbo people for outside Nigeria, they still refuse to bow. And this is the reason why they keep surviving. Igbo man don't bow for propaganda. Other tribe bow for propaganda. That is why they don't even need to propagate against other tribe before they conquer them. example is my tribe. They don't need to propagate against my tribe, which is Benue State, before they conquer us. Because they go push peace. Oh, we are one. We are Arewa. When you are not one with people where they buy you. When we are not Arewa with people where they buy us. But person wey no get sense for Benue State go see Arewa as a brother, go see Arewa as a middle belter. Go see person wey dey kpai you as a brother, one Nigeria. Thunder go fire all of una wey no one reason. Wey because of una foolishness, they dey kpai us every blessed day for Nigeria. So, Israel and Igbo will continue to exist, but you wey no wan fight back, we go continue to lament, being confused, and they're going to erase us if care is not taken. I'm a proudly Benue Igede guy. Anyway, share your thoughts on the comment section responsibly. And for those that love to cry, cry responsibly on the comment section. Thank you.